Boy. Yeah. On the day you were born, I made 2 knives, mixing metals from my home and from this land. One for myself, and when you were ready, one for you. Today is that day.
So I'm a man now, like you?
No. We are not men. We are more than that. The responsibility is far greater. And you must be better than me. Understand?
I know the truth isn't simple. But nothing is when the loves are true.
We must be better. You must never forget them.
My bow!
No! You are not ready! Stay back!
As I've mentioned before, God of War is and remains my favorite franchise growing up throughout all my years of childhood and now adulthood. And while I've become a massive fan as well of the newer franchises like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us, slightly earlier we could say Uncharted, and some of the other PlayStation exclusives like Days Gone, the franchises that stuck with me throughout childhood were mainly Soul Calibur, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, and God of War. And before we dive into what I loved about this franchise, I just wanted to pay tribute to the Leviathan Axe developer. I think his name was George Mall or George Molly. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I will put a spelling up on the screen right now as we speak, and I hope I'm not pronouncing it too wrongly. But Mall, or let's just call him George, is credited with the handling of the Leviathan Axe in the 2018 God of War reboot, and he passed away unfortunately in 2021. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up was because of how big of a part the Leviathan Axe played within God of War 2018. I was about to say 2020. The way they managed to essentially evolve and add a new dynamic to the weapons from the original God of War, which we'd become accustomed to with the Blades of Chaos. And I felt it necessary to give credit when a new idea comes together so beautifully, because often people come with new ideas and they don't get well received by the fans. But I think I speak for many fans, whether you're a God of War fan or not. The part that the Leviathan Axe played in 2018 is a major role, and I expect that to be done going forward as we approach God of War Ragnarok. Now, with Father's Day having just passed over the weekend, I felt this was the perfect time to pay tribute to the Dad of War, as people jokingly call it. And why do I mention Father's Day when it's actually long gone? Well, a little thing is, I actually planned to do this video after Father's Day, but because I got kind of caught up doing other videos, I got busy. I was unable to actually put this video out up until Father's Day, even though I had all my footage gathered together, I had all my script written, and I had everything good to go. But again, unfortunately, I am actually only recording this on the 4th of November, so Father's Day has long gone. But I felt it necessary to be transparent and sort of mention that I'd planned this for Father's Day. But yeah, let's continue on. So, God of War is one of the most enduring franchises in gaming. Santa Monica Studios' epic saga of an angry Spartan hacking and slashing his way through the great Greek myths stretches all the way back to 2005. The franchise has given players no shortages of hack and slash thrills over the years, and most of it is exceptionally high in quality. Each entry maintains a palpable passion, possibly due to not coming out every year, like some other long-running series. Cough cough, Call of Duty, cough cough, FIFA. Now, personally, if I had to rank my favorite entries from the franchise, I'd put God of War 3 at the very top. I'd put that in my first place. I would put God of War 4, which we're discussing right now, 2018. I would put that in second place. And I'd put God of War, the original, in third place. And then I'd put God of War 2 in fourth place at the very last. And then God of War Ascension in fifth, if we were to go with a top 5. Now, as you can tell, I didn't include any of the PSP versions, but that's because unfortunately I didn't get a chance to play any of the PSP versions growing up. I have heard good and bad things, mixed reception from the PSP versions, but for the sake of the story and canon that we're going with, we are going to be taking the main entries, which were all released on console. So God of War 1, 2, 3, Ascension, and then 4, and now 5 that's coming up in a few days with Ragnarok. So God of War 2018 was released on April 20 in 2018 for the PS4 to rave reviews from critics and fans alike. It was quickly nominated 2018 Game of the Year by numerous publications, and this was also in a year which saw games like Red Dead Redemption 2 drop. Detroit Become Human was another one, and other various titles. I think Sekiro might have also dropped in 2018. I could be getting my dates wrong, because Sekiro could be 2019, but I think Sekiro dropped in 2018. But nonetheless, God of War became the 4th highest selling PlayStation 4 game of all time, basically rebooting a beloved franchise with fresh gameplay and a new story anchored in Nordic mythology. The story picks up years after the end of God of War 3, with the main character Kratos living in Midgard, mourning the death of his wife alongside their son Atreus, who we're introduced to for the first time in the franchise. The main story has you deposit her ashes upon the top of the highest peak in all the realms. What seems like a clinch for the former Greek god of war turns into one of the most enthralling 40-hour campaigns video gaming has to offer. While previous entries in the series relied on bloody cutscenes to amuse the player, the 2018 edition uses innovative gameplay and gorgeous 4K visuals to tell a multifaceted story exploring themes of choice, responsibility, and fatherly love. The previous games were limited to largely linear levels with simple puzzles and minimal enemy types, and the combats in those games lent themselves to button mashing to achieve increasingly impressive combos that could be unlocked through game progression. The game's main characters, Kratos and Atreus, are entirely believable as a father-son duo. As the duo grieve the death of the family matriarch, Kratos' wife, Atreus' mother, they have to reckon with each other. Kratos, as he's known to be, is a relentless, dour, bitter man. He hates the gods, expects nothing from life, and is always serious. He offers life lessons like, if you never expect anything, you'll never be disappointed. The tone is delightfully contrasted by Atreus, who's excited to explore the world he's never seen before. Although Atreus does get, a bit annoying from time to time, but that's perfectly portrayed as a young teenager, essentially. Now, the new game, however, features an expansive and impressively detailed open world layout. For players who are completionists, the game provides quite the challenge. There are numerous hidden collectibles throughout the game, pandering to the inner explorer in every player. The main story alone only gives the player a fraction of the weapons, armor, and other gear available in the game, with the completion of side quests and challenges giving you all the rest. From the moment you click on New Game on the main menu in God of War, you're looking through the lens of the same camera that you'll see when the game's credits roll 40 to 60 hours later. After you click New Game, it zooms out and the tree you see above begins getting cut down by Kratos' axe. And that's how the game starts. A simple prompt, click R1 to chop down the tree. It's a small novelty at the game's onset, but it's that same ethos that's applied to the entire game. Whether you're in a cutscene, speaking to a Norse god, fighting a gigantic troll to the death, talking to a city-sized snake that speaks an ancient language, or simply walking around Midgard, the same camera is always with you. There are no loading screens in God of War. There is no statistics screen that pops up after every fight to let you know how many enemies you've killed, how many combos you did. None of that. The entire game is one continuous experience that can only be stopped by you choosing to pause it. Now, the 2018 game is incredibly well balanced, thanks to a completely redesigned combat and weapon system. The primary weapon from the previous games that we all grew to love, the Blades of Chaos, only make an appearance halfway through the main story, requiring players to rely on their fists and the all-new Leviathan axe alongside your shield. And the axe can still be swung as either a standard or power attack like previous games, but can also be aimed and thrown, which is something we didn't have in the previous games. And now the new combos as well introduced take far more finesse to pull off, relying on spacing and timing to connect. The combat system starts out simple, enough for newcomers that hack and slash games can easily experience, and then the thrill of defeating sizable hordes of base level enemies, and as you progress, new enemy types with new abilities added, forcing the player to adapt their playstyle to succeed, whether it's switching stances, chaining different combos, or using different runic and special attacks. Now, I don't mean to sound reductive. The minute-to-minute gameplay of God of War is thoroughly enjoyable, whether Kratos is taking on groups of enemies, toppling massive mythological creatures, solving puzzles, or just exploring. The simple act of playing God of War is thoroughly delighting. The game dangles these incredibly powerful boss fights to keep player interest and to drive a constant cycle of collecting, upgrading, and crafting new gear. The rewarding nature of the triumph against one of these boss fights draws players to seek out the next big fight and repeat the process of leveling to beat them. An excellent example of hard fun. Now, the gear in the game can boost one of 6 main attributes: strength, defense, vitality, runic, cooldown, and luck. Or add resistances to frost, fire, shock, and other of your elemental attacks. By creating multiple parameters in which players can improve their characters, choice of gear can be used to complement various playstyles: physical, defensive, glass cannon, ranged combat, etc., and better combat against specific enemy types, whether it's the fire draugr, the trolls, the frost holes, the fire trolls, dark elves, you name it. The game requires the accumulation of hack silver and crafting resources to build increasingly more powerful gear. The resources are largely difficult to come by, prompting players to make difficult choices when approaching upgrading paths. There exists some element of relentless grinding to collect all of the mist echoes and chaos flames required for endgame armor, almost necessary to complete any of the post-game endeavors. One thing the game lacks, which is surprising for most AAA titles these days, is the lack of an online multiplayer, an important aspect for most modern releases to give a competitive multiplayer mode which puts human players against each other or comparatively against computer enemies. God of War, however, completely stays true to the single-player story-driven games, and it allows Santa Monica Studios to focus solely on the single-player mode. While the PvP mode would be appreciated by some, I think the extra time spent on the single-player mode clearly shows that that it was a better path for Sony Santa Monica to take. And I know some people may disagree with me in the comments because a lot of people enjoy multiplayer games, but for me personally, I think this was a fantastic decision by Sony Santa Monica. And although we would have liked to see something maybe like on the level of Factions, I kind of like that, you know, they're still single player story driven games. And it's not to say that multiplayer games aren't, you know, fun, but there's always a time and place for multiplayer games with different franchises, and that's why we have other titles for that. But I still think Sony staying true to single player story driven narrative games should be a thing that they maintain for maybe their main franchises. So even with like Factions getting its own spin-off game, I still think The Last of Us, for example, would still stay true to always having The Last of Us as their main story being done by Naughty Dog. And I think Sony Santa Monica would take a similar approach. Now, it's not just that God of War is a pretty looking game. It's insanely detailed, visually speaking. From variation in wildflowers to atmospheric lighting, God of War is a visually stunning game from top to bottom. And the game also improved upon the difficulty of puzzles in the new installment, with some requiring people to consult online guides, which again is something that people probably never used to do a lot until maybe God of War Ascension. Now, it should go without saying that thanks to the way the game has been set up, it does have that just one more quality that all the best games we've come to know and love has. Maybe just one more fight, one more objective you want to complete, one more boss fight, one more mission. It's somewhat a dangerous quality for a game to have when you're playing it well past midnight in the middle of the week, but that's a testament to how much pure fun it is to play God of War. And a major element that drives player engagement was the storyline, which was far more nuanced than those of its predecessors. Kratos is quiet, preferring to use his strength to settle his problems. Through his journey with his son, he struggles with guilt and far-reaching repercussions of his past. He struggles to explain his past to reveal his true nature to his son Atreus. And Atreus, after learning about his divine lineage, struggles with deciding his destiny as a god, wanting to do good unlike the gods before him. He struggles between using his power for good rather than doing what he wishes, with coming across some NPCs who ask to lend his godlike strength to their aid. This multifaceted story appeals to players of a diverse background who can all find some aspect of the story that resonates with them. A huge improvement over the previous storylines, which merely pointed you to another target to kill. Overall, the reboot of the God of War franchise was an astounding, critical, and public success that showed that a single-player only story-driven RPG from a AAA studio is commercially viable. It's a blueprint of visually stunning open-world RPG and will likely influence game design for years to come. And I think we also saw this with the way that Ghost of Tsushima was handled and the way that The Last of Us Part 2 was handled. And going forward, I hope that Sony and PlayStation stay true to this and continue to give us more multifaceted stories and compelling stories the way that they did with God of War. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay dangerous, and above all, peace out.
Father.
No. We do it together. Son.